hearing of the Senate Labor and Policy Committee to order. Today is March 17th, 2021. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. And personal note, happy birthday to my mother. So I'm not sure if he's watching, but happy birthday. And a quorum is present. And we have three bills on the agenda. First up is Senate File 1180. Senator Coleman, welcome to the committee, and please present your bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so excited to be before this committee for the first time. And I'm so grateful that this bipartisan bill is receiving its first hearing because I cannot help myself and talk about him constantly. I'm pretty sure people know that I have a son named Adam. And as my first child, Adam taught me a lot about motherhood. And last year, I experienced firsthand what it was like to try to balance working with being a mom. And I was disappointed to see how far we have to come as a country when it comes to supporting mothers who are trying to do something as simple as nourish their baby. I worked at a smaller company, and as a result, they had a lot of current exemptions in our current law. I have personally experienced what it's like to have to pump in a bathroom because a man wanted to use the room they set aside for me to meditate. I have personally experienced what it's like to have to rush through pumping, trying to fit in lunch, only to have the stress and time constraints prevent me from being able to express enough milk for my kid. And luckily, because I was salaried, I never had to experience the anguish of choosing between feeding my baby or maintaining my income. And I don't think any mother should have to make that choice. And this bill aims to fix that by amending state statutes so mothers get paid rather than unpaid break times. And really, break should be in quotations here because it's not a break, to nourish their babies. And with that, Mr. Chair, I have two great testifiers today, and I'd love to turn it over to them.
All right. Is Deborah Fitzpatrick your first testifier?
Yes, Mr. Chair, she is.
All right, let's go to Ms. Fitzpatrick. Please identify yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Rarick, members of the committees. Thank you, Senator Coleman, for your leadership on this issue. My name is Deborah Fitzpatrick, and I'm the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for Children's Defense Fund, Minnesota. I appreciate the opportunity to share our strong support for Senate File 1180. Working families are the backbone of our state, and it is not only the right thing, but the smart thing to invest in policies and programs that set them, their children, and our state up for success. Senate File 1180 is a two-generation approach that creates economic growth for the state and economic stability for families by ensuring new parents are able to continue being productive members of our economy, especially mothers that have seen the largest drops in workforce participation due to the pandemic. 80% of children in the state have both parents in the workforce. 25% of new mothers return to the workforce within 2 weeks of giving birth. Senate File 1180 ensures that nursing people have increased options for staying attached to the workforce, completing a healthy pregnancy, and accessing the many health benefits associated with breastfeeding. Advancing policies that reduce barriers to breastfeeding are smart economic policy. Breastfeeding can reduce a baby's risk for many illnesses and diseases. As any new parent knows, when babies get sick, it can have a cascading effect on a parent's ability to balance the needs of their employer and their child. While it may be obvious how this bill supports working parents, it is also important to recognize how it supports children and the state's future workforce. Parental job loss, economic instability, and the stress that accompany them are an adverse childhood experience with potential long-term impacts on life success. Based on a robust and growing body of research, the National Academies of Science find that even small increases in family income, especially during the earliest childhood years, can have a significant impact on the lifetime trajectory of a child, improving children's academic, health, and economic outcomes. We hope you will join us in supporting Senate File 1180, an important policy that supports both children and working parents, helping ensure a bright future for them and the state. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Next on my list, I have Kate Prushek from the Department of Labor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of Senate File 1180. My name is Kate Prushek, and I am an Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Labor and Industry. The legislation before you today supports expectant and new moms so they can safely work during their pregnancies and continue to breastfeed upon returning to work after the birth of a child. The Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry is responsible for the enforcement of the Nursing Mothers and Pregnancy Accommodation Laws, two key pieces of the Women's Economic Security Act that passed in 2014. Since July 2014, the department has completed 21 investigations of alleged violations of the Pregnancy Accommodations Law. Many of the employees who contacted the department did not have the right to an accommodation because they worked for an employer with fewer than 21 employees. As such, it became clear that a change in law was needed to ensure protections were inclusive to more workers. The reasonable accommodations required under law, more frequent restroom, food, or water breaks, limits to heavy lifting, and seating are minor, yet very important to the health of pregnant workers and their babies. The accommodations are short-term and no or low cost, and all pregnant workers should have a right to request and be provided an accommodation, irrespective of the size of their employer. A reasonable accommodation supports pregnant employees so they can continue to work safely and earn a paycheck. In 2020, DLI contracted with Wilder Research to survey Minnesota women about their knowledge of the nursing mother and pregnancy accommodations laws and the extent to which employees receive these accommodations in the workplace. The survey found that a quarter of nursing mothers identified having to stay late to make up break time used to pump as a major or minor issue, and 50% identified not being able to take or schedule breaks when needed as a major or minor issue. Improving the law by requiring break times to be paid and clarifying that a worker has a right to multiple breaks that may, rather than must, run concurrently with breaks already provided addresses these issues. Importantly, the proposal supports initiation and duration of breastfeeding. Being able to express breast milk at work supports continued breastfeeding, ensures adequate milk supply, and benefits the health of both mother and baby. In addition to supporting working mothers and the health of Minnesota children, these proposed changes will also benefit employers. Benefits include improved employee retention, loyalty, productivity, and lower turnover. I would like to emphasize that the department's primary aim as the agency responsible for enforcing these provisions is to educate employers on their obligations and help them achieve compliance. Since 2014, DLI has received 19 complaints alleging failure of an employer to provide proper accommodations to nursing mothers. In each case, the agency quickly educated the employer about the requirements of the law. When a violation was found by DLI in an investigation, employers under review promptly came into compliance. The department supports Senate File 1180 as it improves workplace protections for pregnant and nursing employees. Thank you for allowing me the time to testify today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. We have one more testifier on the list, and then we'll go to member questions. And if we don't have anyone else who wishes to testify, our final testifier is Mike Hickey with NFIB. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Chairman. Mike Hickey with the National Federation of Independent Business. As many of you on the committee are familiar, we're the state's major small business group with about 9,000 members statewide, and clearly the most affected and in some cases negatively affected group by this proposal. As you know, we're expanding a whole new system of regulation and accommodation on pregnancy to the smallest employers that we've never done. And Minnesota's had the 21 or less exemption. The federal has a 15 employee exemption. And we've never done this. And we're very concerned about difficult situations that are going to rise for a lot of employers when they do have an employee who's pregnant. The problem at the smallest businesses such as this is that a lot of times there's just no one else to turn to. And you've got a small workforce of 5 or 10 people, as you have, just hundreds of businesses throughout your district, Mr. Chairman. There's just not someone else to turn to do a job that the person who needs, additional accommodations and additional breaks and likely or possibly can't continue to work at the pace they are due to their condition. And that just creates a very difficult situation. These are not Fortune 500 companies. These are not large companies where there's hundreds of employees and there's inevitably someone else who could step up and help. And so that's a big concern. When you look at what needs to be accommodated, probably the biggest concern is on the ability to stand up through a work shift, to stand up through your workday. I'm just thinking of common situations for small businesses we see every day. Anybody working retail as a store clerk, possibly they could sit, but I always see them standing, and obviously they're moving around also. Someone being a server at a restaurant, completely dependent on their ability to stand up, or working in the kitchen at a restaurant, completely dependent on their ability to stand up. Someone working in a grocery store, as a smaller grocery store, realize we're talking about 21 or less here, stocking shelves, working at the cash register. So it's just a lot of businesses, some sort of recreational business. We certainly have a lot in this state that just requires ability to have to stand up a lot and be very mobile through your day. So how do you accommodate that with a few employees? It seems like the bill is deciding the limitations with no regard for the job. And some jobs are just going to require ability for someone to stand, and that's one of the items have to be accommodated. Finally, I wanted to comment on the lactation provision. I was involved in this legislation years ago with Senator Ellen Anderson. There always was this recognition that the smallest employers need to have the discretion to decide if this can be done appropriately at their business. A small little business with a 2-room building, a 1-room building, and a bathroom. And it's always been left to the employer to make that decision. And we're strongly opposed to taking that away. And often in these small businesses, there's just not going to be a viable place for somebody to do that. We're not at a large corporate center where there might be several empty offices, or the employee themselves has their own private office, which makes it extremely accessible and convenient for them. So tiny little buildings, tiny little businesses, maybe a couple of rooms and a bathroom, and that's not suitable for this kind of requirement with no exemption whatsoever. So there's a lot to think about here. This is a big change. It couldn't come at a worse time. Small business is struggling like you've never seen. Fortunately, the Senate has stepped up and passed the PPP loan forgiveness, but from your own experiences how bad small business is struggling in this state at this time. And you could not do, not the time to be coming up with new significant regulatory mechanisms on them. It's just not a good time. Obviously, pregnancy is a huge, important issue, but this is not the time for this type of new regulation to be put on the small businesses that are struggling so bad in this pandemic. So thanks for your time. And boy, I hope you put a lot of thought into this. This is a significant expansion of regulation on employers who would be affected.
All right, thank you. I see we have a couple member questions. First, I would just like to ask Senator Coleman, can you, I know you've been working on this very hard with a number of groups. Do you want to go into that a little bit, who you're working with and some of the thoughts moving forward?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been working with our testifiers a little bit about this, and as well as our House author on this, and have been in contact with Mr. Hickey, did respond to some concerns, did not hear back to my response. So hopefully we can continue these conversations down the line.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Senator Isakson. You had your hand up first.
First, let me just compliment Senator Coleman on bringing this bill forward. I'm not known to make compliments on my friends across the aisle often, but I think that what you're doing here is a very good thing. And I would like to invite Mike Hickey and the NFIB into the 21st century. It boggles my mind that you could make comments like that and be so tone deaf to the needs of women. And I just, my wife breastfed all 3 of our kids, and Senator Coleman, it's no joke what you're saying, the stress that goes along with that and the internal stress that comes. And I can't speak too closely to it because obviously I'm not a woman, but talking to my wife and hearing her talk about the stress and the responsibility she feels as a mom to provide enough milk and how crucial that is to literally many parts of her happiness, her day, and her fulfilling her job. And to have a company or a business and what you talked about, because a man had to meditate. Boy, I just about boiled over there. I think that's ridiculous. And that doesn't mean that I'm tone deaf to the needs of businesses, but the needs of businesses need to join our century. I mean, this is ridiculous. Women should have no barriers experiencing other than just how good they are at their job. If that's a problem, other than that, there should be no barriers based on having children, and businesses should work around that. And it boggles my mind that I just heard that testimony I just heard. And Senator Coleman, I hope you stay strong on that. And I mean, I realize that my advice to a GOPer isn't necessarily got a lot of weight, but I want to tell you that I hope you stay strong with that. And I am in solidarity with you on that. And if there's anything we can do to help out, let me know. I think it's wonderful. And I would, there's many places where that could be applied that I think would make a significant difference in moms' lives. And being a mom has got to be the hardest job in the world. And I just applaud you and thank you for bringing the bill forward.
All right. Thank you, Senator Isaacson. Next, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also want to thank Senator Coleman for bringing this forward. And this is where I think we see that elections matter and representation matters. Senator Coleman is going through this currently right now and knows just how important this is to women's ability to fulfill their jobs and to fully participate as equals in our workplaces. And I do too. We know what it is actually, what it physically feels like when you're about to let down on your milk and you feel this pressure in your body and you physically have to pump the milk. And I also have pumped sitting on a toilet in a bathroom stall and know what that's like. So yeah, I mean, these are just such basic things and just such basic accommodations. And I don't think that, I'm glad to hear that, Senator Coleman, that you're working with the small business representatives that we just heard. I know lots of small businesses that are happy to help in many, many ways and to accommodate the needs of people who are nursing. So there can be an arrangement made in some way. So this is not hard. This is not difficult at all. So I also support what you're trying to do here 100%. And if you need any help, I also am here and I would love to help in any way that I can. I'm glad to see this moving forward, and let's go further. Let's do more to make sure that women are able to work as equals in our workplaces, to participate fully in our society in all areas. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I am not seeing any other questions, so I'm just going to remind members we are not doing an omnibus bill here in this committee, and so that Senator Coleman can continue to work with some of the groups. We're going to end up passing this on to jobs where it could be included in an omnibus bill there or sent alone, whichever me and Senator Pratt would work on. But so with that, Senator Coleman, I would ask any closing comments that you have for us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Senator Isaacson and McEwen for your support on this. I really think when it comes to having strong families and strong mothers, that it's a bipartisan effort, and we can work together with our small businesses to have reasonableness in all of our legislation on all fronts with that. No mother should, like I said, have to choose between nourishing her child and eating lunch. And so I think that this is a good step in the right direction. And I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues and the groups that are interested in this legislation moving forward, and urge you to pass this on to jobs. So thank you very much.
All right. With that, Senator McEwen, would you like to be the one to move that this bill be recommended to pass and sent to Jobs and Economic Growth Committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move that Senate File 1180 be moved forward as stated.
All right, members, it looks like we all have our cameras on or unmuted. So all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Congratulations, Senator Coleman. You're on your way to the Jobs Committee.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, next, we're going to be handing the gavel over to Senator Dornick as my bill is up next.
All right, thank you, Senator Rarick. Members, next on the agenda, we have Senate File 2116. Senator Rarick, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much, members. Senate File 2116 is a bill basically to help mainly with the hospitality industry and for suppliers to that industry who have their own equipment. I began working on this with the Ecolab folks earlier this, or I should say this fall, talking about the idea that when they get a call or when they're installing equipment, sometimes can be very difficult to coordinate with a licensed plumber for doing some of the work. And I applaud them. They've worked very closely with the trades and some others to narrow this down so that we're getting it very specific, that we're only dealing with their equipment that they're going to work on, that there's going to be a licensed plumber who will have installed a backflow preventer and a connection for them to hook to. And then the last one is that there is some training pieces that they have to meet as well. So with that, I will turn it over to the testifiers to explain the bill as it is and the process probably that we've gone through. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rarick. I got first on Mr. Hines from Ecolab. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Patrick Hines. I'm with Messerly and Kramer, and I'm here today representing Ecolab. I think many of you are familiar with Ecolab, but just as some brief background, Ecolab was founded in St. Paul in 1923 and has been a proud Minnesota company for nearly 100 years. It's a trusted partner at nearly 3 million customer locations around the world and is a global leader in water, hygiene, and infection prevention solutions. Ecolab provides personalized service to advance food safety, maintain clean and safe environments, and optimize water and energy use in the food, healthcare, industrial, and hospitality markets. Senate File 2116 is an extension of Ecolab's commitment to providing the personalized service for our customers, particularly today, our partners in the hospitality industry who rely on Ecolab to provide food safety and hygiene so they can serve their customers. As Senator Rarick said, and I would like to thank him very much for all the time he's put in working with us on this issue, the purpose is to allow trained technicians to connect the chemical dispensers and warewashing machines that are manufactured by Ecolab or distributed by Ecolab or any other company who would do that as well, to attach to water lines through connections that are previously installed by licensed plumbers as required by the plumbing code. We feel that the narrow scope of the legislation protects public health while allowing trained technicians who work with their partners in the hospitality industry some flexibility to perform the installation and regular maintenance of this equipment quickly and efficiently, and ensure that the dispensers can be installed at critical times like on weekends or in the evenings when a quick replacement can mean the difference between the business staying open or having to close. And I say the public health is protected in 4 primary ways in the way the bill is drafted. First, the equipment itself, whether it be a chemical dispensing unit or a warewashing machine, have integral backflow prevention in them. So that is taken care of. There's no threat of having contamination into the water line from those machines because they have the backflow prevention as a part of their manufacture. The second point is that, as Senator Rarick mentioned, the connection will be to a water line that was already installed by a licensed plumber. So if you're envisioning a copper pipe that comes from the water line, may be capped off, there'd be a T connection there, and that is where the connection would be made. So the licensed plumber would have done that initial work, and then the trained technician is simply doing the connection to that line. We've also spelled out very clearly, and this is on line 2.14 of the bill, the types of connections that can be made. We're talking about the connections that are most simple: push fit connections, compression connections, or threaded pipes, which would be like, for instance, the hose that comes off of your washing machine that connects to the water line. there's no sweating of pipes or doing the other more complicated plumbing work that a licensed plumber still would be required to do. And the fourth piece is that the bill only allows trained technicians to do that. We have training requirements in the bill as it's written now. And we are very happy to work with the trades and with Department of Labor and Industry as necessary to refine the scope of the training, both in the number of hours and the type. Ecolab takes its training very seriously, and we think that that's a strength of the bill because, again, at the end of the day, we're talking about the trained technicians who are working on our own equipment. This isn't a opening up for just general repair of anyone's equipment in the kitchen. Again, I want to thank Senator Rarick. I want to thank the trades, in particular David Ibarra. We've talked with them in the past. We are continuing to talk with them. We would not have brought this bill forward if we didn't believe that we could reach a consensus on the issue. That is very important to Ecolab. We view the trades as our partners. We view the hospitality industry as our partners. And we really want to work together to provide this flexibility while making sure that the public health remains adequately protected. And with that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hines. We'll go on to Mr. Koalas, Minnesota Chamber. If I missed your name, please correct me.
Mr. Chairman, don't worry. It's not the first time it happened. It won't be the last. But members of the committee, my name is Tony Quillis, and I'm wearing a couple of hats this morning. I represent Hospitality Minnesota, and my colleague Lauren Schothorst, as all of us are during this busy committee deadline week, has a previous commitment. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce as well as Hospitality Minnesota. And Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I'd like to thank Senator Rarick for authoring Senate File 2116. We think it's a fair and targeted and reasonable approach and look forward to working with him as well as the other stakeholders as this bill moves through the legislative process. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I'll stick around if there are any questions later.
Thank you, Mr. Quillis. Is that correct? Quillis, for your testimony. Next, we'll move on to Mr. Ybarra, Minnesota Pipe Trade Association. Go ahead when you're ready.
I did unmute myself, but apparently I didn't.
Welcome to our committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Dornick and committee members. For the record, my name is David Ibarra. I am president of the Minnesota Pipe Trades Association. Minnesota Pipe Trades Association is an umbrella organization representing 11 affiliated unions and more than 9,000 men and women working in the plumbing, pipe fitting, and fire protection industries throughout the state of Minnesota. Obviously, I'm here today to offer testimony on Senate File 2116. MPTA does have concerns with the bill as currently drafted. Although I will say, as Mr. Hines indicated, we have had a number of conversations, and I certainly appreciate their outreach. And in fact, we are scheduled to meet later on this afternoon with business managers of mine from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Rochester to further discuss the issue and get a better understanding of each other's concerns and hopefully reach consensus. I'll just add that I've worked on a number of bills authored by Chair Rarick, and I want to say that I genuinely appreciate his efforts to bring interested parties together in an effort to achieve consensus. And I'll just wrap again by saying thank you to the chairman for authoring Senate File 2116. And I look forward to the additional conversation with other stakeholders that I believe will result in a better bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. So members, now we'll go to questions. Senator Isaacson, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just realized my computer wasn't on mute, and I've got dogs and kids running around, so I apologize if that's been distracting. I try not to be that guy. So either to Tony or Patrick, Mr. Quillis or Mr. Hines. So first, maybe to Mr. Hines, how many of these are you doing annually? How many installations like this would be done annually by you if this bill were to pass, specifically just you, or just Ecolab, I should say?
Go ahead, Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Isaacson. And yes, just to be clear, I would not be installing any personally.
Right.
You certainly wouldn't want that to happen.
No, I understand that. Me neither. I'm a big guy for that.
I would have to get back to you with a specific answer because it's, I'm not comfortable putting out a number that I don't have. It would be, Ecolab does a lot of business around the state of Minnesota, so it would be a substantial number, but I'd be happy to get that information to you.
Well, I think, and I asked that as a setup for the next question, is like, what percentage of the total amount of these procedures with plumbing are being done by Ecolab versus other companies? And the reason I say that is because my guess is, being the giant, you probably do the lion's share of these versus anybody else. And I would be much more comfortable with this if this was narrowed to allow Ecolab that, and we certified your training, than allowing just anybody to do it as a, because I think that what I'm concerned about is that we trust Ecolab to have the right training, and you work with David Ybarra, and we feel like you get to a good place with that. But we're not just allowing you to do it, we're allowing anybody to do it, which means that the training may not be the same. And so for me, my comfort level would be higher if this was specific to you guys in your training, or you work something out where the training was certified through what the plumbers needed to be, I guess. And that would make me feel a little better about what you guys are trying to accomplish. I do sincerely appreciate the fact that you've been really mindful of it. I think that's really a nice thing, and it makes me want to work with you even more. And I hope that you and David can come to a conclusion on that. But I'll tell you that if this comes to the floor without an agreement and it's still as broad as it is, I'm going to want to narrow that down to being just Ecolab, because I think you guys are a big corporation that are trying to do the right thing, but I'm not believing everybody might be the best actors in that. And so I'd be just interested maybe in your feedback or Mr. Qualis's feedback on that.
Mr. Hines, did you have any other comments? Thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Isaacson. And first, thank you for the faith you've shown in Ecolab. I appreciate that. I'm not certain how a bill would look or be appropriate if it were directed at one company. But I would share your concern that the intent is to make sure that the training that is required would apply across the board and would be consistent and adequate to meet the concerns of both the trades and the department. And we are happy to work on language with all stakeholders to figure out a way to address that concern, to make sure that any company that was trying to take advantage of the flexibility that the bill gets still is meeting the rigorous requirements that I know Ecolab would meet, and we would want to make sure that everyone does. So we're happy to work on that as we go forward.
Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry, Mr. Qualis. I didn't mean to in front of you if you were going to say something.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Hines covered what our concerns and what our views would be.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Isaacson.
So I think that, I hope that you guys can figure that out, because I'm definitely not comfortable with the blanket statement of this. If there was something that you worked out with the pipe trades that showed the kind of training that was necessary, or engage them in the training or something like that, I think would be really helpful. But until that was reached, it'd be tough for me to feel comfortable with that, because while I do believe that Ecolab is being a good faith partner in this, it'd be really tough to regulate everybody across the board on that in a way that's meaningful without really changing a lot. And so that's why I think being more specific, I share your skepticism on writing an Ecolab bill, but I'm just trying to give you an example of how we might approach that. So I hope that you guys can figure that out. I encourage you to do that, because I'm definitely going to be watching for that as we get closer to the floor and what happens in the House as well. So again, thank you for your time, and thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you, Senator Isaacson. Next, we'll move on to Senator McEwen. I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to voice that I would echo what Senator Isaacson said in regard to I'm glad that there's a lot of collaboration here, and I'll be following how this goes. I do worry about a sort of slippery slope of these carve-outs. So that is really kind of one of my top concerns with this is, we do little carve-outs here, little carve-outs there, little carve-outs there, and pretty soon that's a real big problem. So, but I will be following, and I'm glad that there is collaboration here, and we'll see how it goes. So, thanks.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, Senator Rarick, closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you to all the folks here that were testifying and the work that they've put into it, and the willingness to work together. That's why I have a few different bills, as was mentioned, and that's why this one is here today. I believe we've kind of gotten to a better consensus on this one than some of the others. So there was a little bit of confusion this morning. We are gonna send this to Jobs Committee and continue to work on it. The House bill did not get turned in yet, so we'll get flagged and sent over to Rules before it gets sent back to Jobs, just so everyone is clear on the path that it's going to be taking. But we are going to continue to work on it, and if we don't have a consensus, it would not end up in the Jobs Omnibus bill. So, but I do appreciate all the work that folks have been willing to put into and talk around this one.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Isaacson.
Yeah, question for Senator Rick. Why can't you just send it to? Why does it need to be heard in the House before you can go to? Oh, because it's late. That's why. Okay,
right.
Sorry, I answered my question. I should have my talk. Sorry.
Yeah, just so that it would have needed to have been in the jurisdiction of a finance committee to meet second deadline. It doesn't meet that, so it'll get flagged, sent to Rules, and then back to Jobs. So I guess with that, I would move that the Senate file. What is it? 2116 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Jobs and Economic Growth Committee.
Thank you, Senator Rick. Members, the motion is in front of us that Senate File 2116 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Rules Committee.
Jobs.
I'm sorry, Jobs. I got it. Jobs Committee. And Jobs. So it's going to Rules first and then to Jobs. Is that correct? Or just
it's going to Jobs. Rules will flag it and take it.
Okay, so it's going to Jobs. Okay. So if you want to make sure your videos are on mute, we'll take the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Senate File 2116 will be sent to Rules. Congratulations, Senator Rick. You're on to the Jobs Committee.
Thank you very much.
Last on our agenda, we have Senate File 155. Senator Dietzig, I believe you have a few amendments. Let's go ahead and move these before we get to your testimony. Senator Goggin, will you move the A2 amendment?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Members, Senator Goggin move the A2 amendment. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion prevails. The A2 amendment is adopted. Senator Dietzig, I believe you have the A3 amendment.
That is correct, Chair Dornick. I have a A2 is an author's amendment that limited the bill to public high rises. And then the A3 amendment is a technical amendment that clarifies that the commissioner that is referred to in the bill is the Commissioner of Public Safety. So it is purely a technical amendment.
All right, Senator Goggin, will you move the A3 amendment?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Members, Senator Goggin moves the A3 amendment. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion prevails and A3 amendment is adopted. Senator Dietzig, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. Good morning. Many of you may know that there was a fire in a public housing high-rise in my district right before Thanksgiving in 2019. 5 people died in that fire. You can still see the black charring in the window, around the window when you drive by. That is a deep reminder of not just the fire, but it is deep scarring for the friends and families of those killed. And my thoughts are with those families. This 25-story building was built in 1970 and was not required to have sprinklers. This bill will now require, the revised bill will now require sprinklers to be put into public high-rise buildings. The bill requires that the owners of the building submit a letter to the state fire marshal stating their intent to comply with the sprinkler requirement, and they need a plan for achieving the compliance, so they need to do that by August 2022. Then they must retrofit the buildings with the automatic sprinkler systems by August 2032, so we are giving them 10 years. The bill also allows for an extension if requested. The bill gives public housing authorities time to develop a plan and to make these critical life safety maintenance repairs and upgrades. This bill can prevent future fire tragedies so no one else dies. With me to testify on behalf of the bill are Mr. James Smith, State Fire Marshal, Mr. David Ibarra with the pipe fitters, and Mr. Tom Brace with the Fire Sprinkler Association. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Dietzig. Mr. Smith, State Fire Marshal, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Jim Smith and I proudly and humbly serve as the State Fire Marshal. Since 2004 in Minnesota alone, there have been 64 fires that started on or above the 7th floor in a high-rise structure. You will note in the bill that the foot is 75 feet, and that is what NFPA dictates as or has a definition of a high-rise structure. The greatest majority of these fires occurred in multifamily residences. Interestingly enough, there was an automatic fire sprinkler system present in each of these structures. In the 64 high-rise fires, a single sprinkler head extinguished the fire. Let me say that again. One sprinkler head extinguished the fire. The main difference between those 64 fires and the deadly fire that occurred in the early hours of November 27th, 2019 at 630 Cedar is that there were no automatic sprinkler systems installed to protect the residents who lived there. The fires started quite accidentally. It started as a small fire that soon grew to mammoth proportions, consuming the small 400 square foot apartment, creating thick, choking, toxic black smoke that filled the hallways and stairwells of the apartment complex. It created an atmosphere that made it tremendously difficult and in some cases impossible to escape. The tragedy of losing these 5 innocent people is only magnified by the simple fact that this disastrous fire would have been quickly contained, if not completely extinguished, had there been the presence of an automatic fire sprinkler system in the apartment of origin. The mission of the State Fire Marshal Division is to protect the lives and property of every single person residing in or even simply passing through this great state of Minnesota. To be clear, the State Fire Marshal has and will always strongly advocate for the installation and this legislation of automatic fire sprinklers in multifamily public housing high-rise dwellings. Members of the committee, through this legislation, propose federal assistance and public-private partnerships. We now have a path leading us forward to retrofit every public housing multi-story apartment building in the state of Minnesota. I thank you for your time, and I will stand for questions later on.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your testimony. Next, we'll move on to Mr. Brace, National Fire Sprinkler Association. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tom Brace. I served as the Washington State Fire Marshal for 10 years and then came to Minnesota and had the opportunity to serve for 16 years as the Minnesota State Fire Marshal. This is an important piece of legislation. I think State Fire Marshal Smith outlined it very succinctly. I'd like to just point out that there are 3 groups of people involved in this high-rise retrofit public housing bill. Number 1, of course, would be the residents. Now, if we look at fire statistics, we'll find that there are 2 groups of people that die at a disproportionate rate in fires. Our children, 10 and under, our seniors, 60 and over. Also, we have a situation where there are staff at these facilities as well, and I think it's important to remember them. Also, there is the issue of many of these people have mobility issues, cannot move as quickly as one might think. So it's an important element to consider about how fast they could be evacuated. And third, think, if you will, about the fire service. The fire service having to, in this case, carry up 14 floors at 630 Cedar, all of their equipment to fight a fire. Now, carrying it all up, and then when you arrive, and then think about 30 minutes of air that they have carrying on their backs. So 3 different groups that we need to be sensitive to, the advocacy and the effectiveness of sprinklers, well documented across this country by history, a technology that's over 100 years old. We urge consideration, positive consideration of this bill. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing it.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Brace. Next, we have David Ybarra, Minnesota Pipe Trade Association. Go ahead when you're ready.
Again, thank you, Chair Dornick, members of the committee. For the record, David Ybarra, Minnesota Pipe Trades Association. Again, we are an umbrella organization representing more than 9,000 men and women working in piping-related industries, including the licensed craft professionals that install, maintain, and repair automatic fire sprinkler systems in residential, commercial, and industrial applications. I'll also add that I am a licensed sprinkler fitter in the state of Minnesota in my 30th year in the industry. We are fully supportive of Senate File 155 as amended, and would like to thank Senator Diedzek for authoring this important piece of legislation, as well as the other senators that have signed on as co-authors. There is an abundance of data that reflects the effectiveness of automatic fire sprinkler systems in saving lives and protecting property. Nonetheless, the occurrence of a tragedy is often what initiates the dialogue and raising the awareness for the need of sprinkler systems. I submit the following as examples. In 1980, MGM Hotel in Las Vegas, a fire resulted in 85 fatalities and more than 600 injuries. In 2000, at Boland Hall Dormitory on the Seton Hall University campus in New Jersey, a fire resulted in 3 deaths and 58 injuries. 2003 or thereabouts, 2 separate fires in healthcare centers resulted in 31 fatalities. As a result of these tragedies, legislation or policy change was adopted requiring all buildings open to the public in Nevada and all dormitories in New Jersey be equipped with automatic sprinklers. The Government Accountability Office recommended nursing homes have automatic sprinkler systems in 2004. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid now require sprinkler systems for facilities participating in the Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement programs. I believe Senate File 155 as amended will reduce the likelihood that we will have another fire-related tragedy in our community, and I respectfully ask for your support. Thanking you for allowing me to testify this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Ybarra. Members, are there any questions? Senator Goggin, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question, or actually just I'd like to ask David Ybarra, seeing as how you do the installations on that, can you give us a high-level overview of what the retrofit entails to put the sprinkler system in the existing buildings, please?
Go ahead, Mr. Ybarra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Goggin, thanks for the question. While I've been in the industry for 30 years, I've been out of the field for 15 years, so my memory may be a little bit vague, but these buildings, I believe, are already equipped with standpipes in the stairwells. And so often what happens is there's also a fire pump typically in these high rises. So in the engineering side of things, more often than not, they'll be able to just install fire control valves and sprinklers on the floors of the facility. In terms of the disruption to the tenants, my understanding again is that typically residents will be disrupted for half a day to a day, typically at most, in terms of the people being in their apartment installing the sprinkler system. So the disruption is minimal, and certainly the inconvenience is well worth it, in my opinion.
Great, thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator McEwen, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the fully operational date. And forgive me if someone testified to this, and perhaps I was looking at something and I missed it. but I noticed that the date that it must be fully operational is not until August 1st, 2033. Just, in gut check wise, for me, that feels like a long time from now. That's 12 years. I'm wondering why so long?
One of the testifiers, Mr. Smith, Mr. Brace, or Ybarra, go ahead, whoever would like to speak to that.
Mr. Chair, this is Senator Dietzig. Thank you, Senator McEwen, for the question. Part of that was the time frame. So what we've heard as we were discussing this bill early on, that and there was a similar bill in 1985 that failed, and part of that was the cost. And so we wanted to give these, especially public housing, in the bill as originally drafted, also included a lot of low-income housing, and we wanted to ensure that they had enough time to literally get the funding, and then for quite frankly, for some of the other entities besides public housing, bonding or other financing options. And so it is a long time out. We're hoping that they move quicker, but it was a balancing act of picking a date.
Thank you, Senator Dietzig. Senator McEwen, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you for answering my question about that. It just, my preference would be to see this happen much faster than by 2033, obviously, and to have seen it applied more widely. But of course, I support any effort to move in this direction. So thank you for this.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, members? Otherwise, I have a question. How many buildings would this include? Any idea of the number of buildings? And I'm not sure who would want to answer that, but go ahead. Whoever want to answer that question.
Mr. Chair, this is Jim Smith, State Fire Marshal. We believe that probably this affects 85% of all the high rises. Most of them are going to be in Minneapolis. Minneapolis reported that they have 26 multifamily high-rise dwellings. We don't know out of that. We do have a public housing list, for Minneapolis, but it does not state whether or not they are sprinkled or not. So we know that we're dealing with maximum of 26 in Minneapolis, and then obviously that would be pared down depending upon if they're a PHA or not. St. Paul has retrofitted all of their PHA buildings. We do not have numbers from Rochester, Mankato, or Duluth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair?
Was that Senator Dietzig?
Yep. So thank you for the question. In Minneapolis, Minneapolis has some 42 public housing buildings, and we have 16 of them have been sprinklers put in. There are 26 left in the public housing buildings. Majority of them are high rises over 7 stories, and so they are in the process and have a plan of doing that. So they will be impacted. I have potentially a 7-story building in St. James, a 7-story public housing building in North Mankato, a 7-story public housing building in Hutchinson. I don't have, so I have Olmsted County as opposed to Rochester. Olmsted counties are all under 7 stories. And so that has been part of the challenge that we have spent the last year, is getting a list of those buildings that would be impacted. And so that is, again, also part of the year out time frame, is to literally make sure people are aware of this change, and then also giving them time to finance it. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator Dietzig. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, Senator Dietzig, closing remarks.
Yes, I'd like to thank the fire marshals, the fire chiefs, the pipe fitters, the Sprinkler Association, and all the other advocates that have helped on this bill. It has been a work in process, and we're going to continue to have conversations and work, because this bill is narrowed down, and I think it's a good start, but we also want to figure out how do we make other people in all high rises feel safe where they live. So thank you, members, for your time and your consideration of this bill, and I ask for your support.
Thank you, Senator Dietzig. Senator Isaacson, will you move Senate File 155 as amended, be recommended to pass and referred to the Judiciary Committee?
I think Senator Isaacson might have had to step away for his teaching obligation.
Senator McEwen, would you mind moving Senate File 155 as amended, be recommended and passed and referred to the Judiciary Committee?
I would be honored, Mr. Chair. So moved.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. So let's take the Senator McEwen had moved Senate File 155 as amended, be recommended to pass and be referred to Judiciary Committee. Have your videos on and unmuted, and we will take the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion prevails, and Senate File 155 as amended will be sent to the Judiciary. Members, well, thank you, Senator Dietzig, for that. You're on your way to the Judiciary. Members, that completes our agenda for today. With that, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you. We're adjourned.